Hey, we're live.
Hey,
Yay!
Woo! It's Jess the Ska Kid and the Knights of the Round Table.
Give points.
Beer guy.
And on the phone with us this evening is Tazy Phillipz from Ska Parade. And this is brand new for us. Hi, welcome.
Hi, and Scappy New Year.
Scappy New Year to you as well. It's not Scappy, it's not a long A.
No, it just has ska on it, so it just sort of gives the message of ska.
So I want to say thank you and welcome because last year when we connected and we started following along and paying attention to who you were, as we sat and talked one night, we were like, it would be pretty neat to ask these guys to come actually interview with us so that we can help cross-promote other shows that promote ska music. So thanks for being our guinea pig. You are our first.
Well, I'm glad to be the guinea bunny or the guinea kitty. That's
yes.
That's totally fine. I've been at what I've been doing for, if you can believe, November is going to mark the 30th anniversary of when my brother and I started Ska Parade. It wasn't the weekly radio show, but we did a documentary back in 1989. That was called Ska Parade, and, had a whole bunch of bands just sort of documenting the scene, and that's sort of where the whole third wave ska thing came from.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, was going to be how did Ska Parade come about, and that article that had been written a few months back that highlighted you, your show, and what you've been doing for the scene. So let's talk about your roots. How did you start, and how did Ska Parade come to be?
Well, I started, when I went to college, I ended up going to UC Irvine. And my big decision of doing that was I was in a band. I don't know, we didn't really play out that much, but my singer went to UC Irvine, and the idea was, I'll just go where Troy went, and we'll continue the band, and that was sort of the idea. So that was sort of how I got to UC Irvine from Northern California. And when I got, and Troy was my roommate the first year, but then when I got there, Troy was too busy with his girlfriend then to give me any time. So I ended up walking around the campus of UCI, and literally the second day I was there, I came across this incredible college radio station called KUCI, and I was literally sitting in the lobby looking, and somebody came out and said, hey, we're doing the news right now. One of our news people flaked out. Can you read copy? And literally, I was like, yeah, and that's what began my career in radio. So that was in 1988.
I was 2.
I wasn't.
So then, because you've grown significantly, you've had a radio show for 30 years. How have you made radio your life? How has it been able to become your occupation? Well,
let me just sort of, a lot of it is for the love of the music. I do, I personally, I fell in love with the music when my brother and I did the documentary that aired on KUCI in November of 1989. And at that time, it was the most listened to broadcast in the history of the station. And the next January, they gave my brother and I a weekly show. So we started there. Now, part of the first documentary this is where I met No Doubt. I did the last interview with Operation Ivy on that. I didn't know that was going to be I didn't know they were going to break up like a month later. That wasn't in the cards. But I met a lot of the bands, the Toasters, Dim Scala Dim. A whole bunch of bands that were happening in the Midwest. Basically, but there was so much that was going on stateside that it really perked my interest. And, through one thing sort of led to another, and I was like connected to one of the pioneers of ska, and his name was Roland Alfonso. And I hit it off with Roland, and, there was, some magical things happened because of that. But when we started doing the show, I would invite bands to come on and do interviews and then do like performance type of stuff. And our pretty much our house band for a long time was No Doubt. They appeared like 16 times on the show. So, I was doing this show, and people were sending me their demos and albums from all over the world. I mean, it was about this unusual music that originated from Jamaica called ska. And I was, my brother and I felt like we were whether it was fate or whatever, but, we felt like we were the historians or the keeper of the music, if that makes any sense, with the blessing of Roland Alfonso and Angelo Fishbone.
Ooh,
Basically, I've, been doing the show. So when I was at UC Irvine, it was one of the most popular shows there. And then I would go out, and be part of, the different band shows. And I ended up meeting some of the folks from the world famous K-Rock, and one of them invited me and planted that idea that maybe I should intern for them. So I took them up on it. And I ended up interning over at the biggest radio station in the world in 1993. And when I was there, I was pushing ska the whole time, to the point where everybody there, if they thought the word ska, they would think of Tazy.
That's
pretty neat. And I learned some things in terms of how to maneuver, how to work things through the system where, it seemed more organic. And what ended up happening was one of my buddies ended up being one of the new music assistants, and I gave him an advance copy of a compilation my brother and I were doing that was coming out the beginning of 1995. And I gave him an advance copy, and he came back to me and he said one of the bands he liked on it was this band from Long Beach called Sublime, and it was a live version of a song called Date Rape. And he asked if I could get him a studio version of that, and I did. And I ended up becoming the middleman with working this band that, quite honestly, everybody thought was going to be a one-hit wonder. And instead, it launches third wave ska. It launches the career of Sublime and all the reggae stuff, the American reggae stuff. And it also ends up, because Sublime being the not exactly the easiest bands to work with because of all the drug overuse, it ends up opening up the door for the band that introduced me to Sublime, which was No Doubt. So it's sort of like one of those what comes around goes around type of stories. But yeah, I mean, it's just very, very surreal. But yeah, Ska Parade became the eye of the storm of third wave ska in the 90s. I mean, like, so many bands broke from the show. It's not even funny. The strange thing was, after everything went down with Sublime and their song Date Rape becoming a huge hit, I ended up taking a label job at a label. And I thought I was going to be, signing some of my favorite bands, and my boss wasn't so into signing any of the ska bands. And, it's just sort of what it is, maybe in an alternative, parallel world, but I had first dibs on Real Big Fish, and I came very close to signing them, and my boss passed, and then that's when John Feldman got him for Mojo.
Wow. How?
So yeah, no, there's a bunch of crazy stories, and for years I've been working. Everyone's like, "Oh, you should do a book," because just the amount of No Doubt and Sublime stories. The Sublime stories are incredible, and actually some of the No Doubt stuff is mind blowing as well. So I've been working on for years to do a book, and one of my biggest challenges is I have a fear of writing, and so it's taking me a long time to write a whole bunch of stuff, but I have, and I've gotten through it where I'm to the point where I'm working with an editor, and it's a massive undertaking, but I'm actually going to see this through. And but the stories are just again mind blowing. I don't know. I ended up being that guy from Orange County that was helping break all the bands.
So then, as part of your duties as well, while playing and meeting, were you involved in also booking and negotiating shows and doing that sort of thing?
Not as much, because I was so focused on doing the radio thing, and then at a lot of the shows we ended up doing Ska Parade booths, and where we would sell a variety of different ska merchandise. And anyway, we started doing pretty good. There was times where we were outselling some of the bands, and then they started not letting us after that. So, I really didn't put on any concerts until I did my first. Well, no, that's not true. I did some stages. At like a festival thing called Independence Day '94, I did a Ska Parade stage there. I did, but the big thing that we did was, I put together a CD release party for our first Ska Parade compilation, and this is when Date Rape just hit the airwaves of K-Rock, and as a thank you and as a surprise guest. I quite honestly, I didn't know this was going to happen, but my show that I did at the Ice House is pretty epic. So I co-promoted with a guy that knew how to do shows, and years later, he's one of the guys that helped start a thing called Coachella.
Ah, wow!
And that guy's name is Bill Fold. And so Bill Fold and we ended up promoting the Ska Parade CD release party at the Ice House, and I put together the bill, and Bill Fold handled most of the business stuff, and we had a line around the block in the rain, and the lineup on this thing was great. So it was the band who does the Ska Parade metal scene. When I opened, they opened it up. And then there was a new band on the scene that I adored, and they weren't even on the new compilation. And in fact, Bill Fold was fighting me of how come I put them on the bill, and I said they have to be there. And so that was the first time I had ever booked a band called the Aquabats,
Haha.
And to tell you how young they were in their career, they didn't have a keyboard stand. They used an ironing board. And the funny thing out of it, so that's the first time Bill Folds sees the Aquabats, and then him and another guy become their managers.
Huh.
So okay. So who else was on the bill? There was a great traditional ska band that I loved that was sort of like Hep Cat Jr. and they were called C Spot, and they played, and I still adore that band to the day. And unfortunately, things will never happen for them. And then the headliner was let's see, I think was Meal Ticket on it? They might have been on it too. They were sort of like a No Doubt type of band. And then headlining was a band that I was very close to called the Skeletones.
Oh,
and
great.
And then we had the surprise band. But I didn't know that was going to go down until the day of. And what ended up happening, and I didn't know this until years later, but I was friends with Bradley Knoll. And Bradley, I don't know, we had some type of rapport together. When Sublime played live on my show, they gave their best ever live performance ever. And two of those songs made the first Ska Parade compilation. When does a live version of a song convince one of the programming department at the biggest radio station in America that this might be a hit song? Everything about it is weird and strange and unusual, but and again, you plant some seeds and you nurture them and you watch them grow. That's what ends up happening. So, as a thank you for getting them on K-Rock, what I didn't know was Bradley had checked himself out for rehab, so he could be the surprise. Him and Sublime could be the surprise guests at the end of the Ska Parade CD release party.
Wow.
I think that's a pretty rad CD release party, and that was literally, my first real show that I promoted.
That's pretty significant. I mean, you keep saying weird and off, but let's say significant and historical, because had it not been for folks like you and these other human beings, you all laid the groundwork for what it is that a lot of people know. And,
Yep.
That's not anything to bat an eye at, because
we went from once State Rape hit the airwaves, it was a bona fide hit. I mean, quite honestly, to this day, it is one of the biggest songs ever in the history of K-Rock. And the band was so problematic to work with that they were looking for other bands that had similar sounds. And then that's the rise of No Doubt. And then after that was Goldfinger. And then you have the next tier bands for me, which, like Real Big Fish and Say Ferris and the Aquabats and Cherry Poppin' Daddies and Less Than Jake and on and on and on.
Right. I
was Ground Central Station. I don't know, that's Ska Parade.
So I have a question, because
I have an answer.
I believe that you will. So I obviously was a little bit in the mid to late 90s, and I was introduced to ska by some of that radio play, and then our scene here loved ska, and ska and punk in Kenosha got huge, which led for more discovery of first and second wave to me. But at that point, it was almost, you got to 90, we'll say 8, and ska kind of dropped almost off of the map, and everyone kept saying that ska was dead. So how easy or difficult has it been to maintain a show based on a genre that has had ebb and flows and did almost die off? I mean, we all know it didn't die off because there were still underground bands.
It's the whole ska is dead stuff is a bunch of horseshit. It's always been alive since it first started. The difference when third wave ska was coming up in the 90s was, I got it on the biggest radio station in America, and then it went out from there and went straight to MTV. Mm-hmm. And influenced everyone to the point where, I can't tell you how many times back in the day I had to describe what ska was.
You mean ska isn't Real Big Fish? Just Real Big Fish?
No, they're part of it, and they've done. I've known Aaron Barrett since the very beginning. He used to swing by my show a lot. And there was a time where when they first started, I didn't care for them. But then, I don't know, it was maybe a year and a half later, it was the same guys and the same songs, but things had gelled, and you couldn't believe it was the same band. And that's when they were ready. And they have a great work ethic. Aaron he's an incredible songwriter and player, and they got very good management, and they've been through thick and thin doing what they're doing. And getting back to Ska Parade, basically by '96. I had felt I had conquered ska. In terms of, I was having all the bands coming on, performing live on the show, and I had the opportunity by the manager of a whole bunch of acts. There was a reunion of one of my favorite punk bands when I was in high school. Well, not when I was in high school. They were my favorite band when I was in high school. But they were reuniting in '96, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, Tazy, would you want to have the Descendants live on your show? What would you say?"
I would probably pause for a second to catch my breath. And
I think
I'd probably squeal a little bit.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And so the first non-ska band that I have on Ska Parade is Descendants. And then that sort of plants the idea, well, maybe we can have bands that aren't necessarily ska on the show. So, and I had, over 500 different acts.
That's amazing.
And, the range is just incredible. But the backbone of the show has always been the ska and the punk.
So, for those who are just...
And when I'm talking about the bands that were coming in and playing live on the show, I'm talking, I had Dirty Dozen. This is probably the most epic it got. I had Dirty Dozen Brass Band the first hour, and I had Fugazi the second hour, and that was in '99.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I had At the Drive-In, I had Jimmy Eat World, I had Maroon 5, I had.
And that's way off the ska beaten path there, because none of
that. It's with bands that I was digging, I would call them up and invite them to come down to the show.
Good.
It's either good music or otherwise. But with the history of the show, basically the backbone has always been ska and punk.
Are you
mostly ska?
Is your show now independent? Are you still going through a major radio station?
No.
So let's talk about that transition.
So to rewind a little bit. So after I left K-Rock to work at a record label, my boss wasn't into, he wasn't signing the bands that I was hoping to sign. And so I left, and I was asked to try my show on a commercial alternative station, and I was scared to death to bring it back to K-Rock. Because what happens if it didn't work? So there was a brand new station in San Bernardino in the Inland Empire, which was a key ska punk market. And they started up a new station called X103.9, and so I ended up bringing Ska Parade there. So I would do my show Saturday night, or I do my show Saturday afternoons at the college radio station, and then Sunday nights I would be on X103.9 doing Ska Parade. And we completely took over Inland Empire from K-Rock.
Huh.
And then K-Rock started, copying a lot of the bands. Mm. But I never had the opportunity to bring the show to. I mean, I guess I sort of did, but I wasn't comfortable. So I was comfortable going to this little station in the Inland Empire, and then that station ended up being there for 20 years. And then they pulled the plug on that. And mind you, there was times where I wasn't on a station, and then there was times where I was on stations. And that's just sort of how things ebb and flow with things. But, I have a pretty good track record of launching key bands and key songs. And so, program directors would give me a chance. And the show would always last, and do very well until, whether or not the stations held out or not. And a lot of times, a lot of the stations, even though they were doing well, they would get the plug pulled out on them. Mm. And so after so many years, what ends up happening to the station that I the commercial station that I was on, they pulled the plug on that after 20 years. And the longtime music director said, I'm not, because a lot of people lost their gig after that. And he said, screw this, I'm going to start my own station. It's going to be an app-based station. Mm-hmm. So he started a station called Dirty Radio. Mm-hmm. That's an app-based commercial alternative station. And they completely took over what X103.9 was doing in the Inland Empire.
So how would one get on that app?
Oh, well, you can download it from...
Nope, time out, not that.
Yeah, you can...
No,
is that what you're talking about, or
no,
are you talking about
if
just
you
in general?
Yes, like, you got on that app and were brought on as a show because of your connection already. If somebody...
Yeah, but I've known the longtime music director who was at X103.9 for years.
Right. We
were friends. He's more on the metal side of things. But, when I was looking for the right home, when in, what was it, the tail end of 2016, I wanted, it was the right place for me to, because quite honestly, none of the other stations would be able to offer me what they were able to offer me.
But what about, like, other people who do podcasts? Or, for instance, this show, how the hell would we, is there a possibility that would ever be able to happen? Where, like, what we do is on an app-based radio show.
Well, it's a more complicated question. I think what it comes down to is you just have to just keep doing things as best you can. And I've always been pretty independent. I mean, if you saw the production of the show, it sounds a lot. I mean, I put my heart and soul into it, and I've 30 years of doing playlists. I've come to terms that's why God has put me on this earth, so I can make a playlist for everyone every week.
And your show.
But to answer your question, yeah, I don't know. It's not an easy path to get things out there. All you can do is just keep doing things that you're able to keep within your control.
Right. Is the station growing?
Oh yeah, no, station's been doing great. I mean, in terms of listenership to Ska Parade, I mean, it's like selling out the Palladium in Hollywood twice a week.
Wow. And now, because you were in a station, I used to also be a DJ. So I would go into an actual physical establishment, sit down, have a board, have my mix up, do that sort of thing. Now that you are doing something that is app-based, is this now done out of your home? Are you responsible?
Yes.
Tell us about that. How does production go now as opposed to when you first started?
Oh, well, I mean, it was a bunch of, it's all about logistics and planning. I mean, doing Ska Parade and booking. I mean, it's the same thing you're doing. You're booking guests multiple times a week, having different bands come on, doing interviews with a whole bunch of different people on different days. I mean, it's the same thing. However, now with the technology, yeah, most of the time it's me, Mrs. Tazy, the kitty cats, and the computer. And I don't have to drive an hour to go to San Bernardino to be at the station at the right on the nick of time. Mm-hmm. And then you have to do the drive home afterwards, which was tough at times.
Right.
But now it's pretty much me and the computer. However, I do spend a lot of time, really, I'm like, I don't know how else to put it. I'm sort of like a fine artist, except I don't paint with paints. I paint with sound. Does that make any sense?
Yes, because that was our conversation Friday with MC Zulu, who was here. So, and how, those sounds are art, and that our bodies resonate and respond to that, and it creates, emotion and other art, and why, music then is important. Here's a question. So we get people from all over the place sending us stuff, and we do everything off of our phone. We set up our phone on a tripod.
Right.
We record ourselves. We play this stuff, but we've been running into a lot of issues where we're being flagged for playing copyright stuff. How does that work through you guys? Do you, through...
Because dirty radio is fully licensed.
Gotcha. What does that entail?
A lot, I guess you gotta, quite honestly, that was one of my terms, that I don't have to deal with that.
Ah, gotcha.
And so that's more of something that my program director running the station has to deal with, and he has to probably cut a large check at the beginning of the year, of each year.
Mm-hmm. So then you are FCC regulated, correct?
Well, no, we're uncensored radio.
Okay.
So no, it's not regulated by the, it's not like terrestrial radio.
Gotcha.
So yeah, no, we're that's a huge plus in my book. I for years I couldn't play anything that had cursing in it or whatever,
Right. I do know.
And it's really liberating when you're able to play things how they're supposed to be. However, I do it my approach to it is I've always, I don't know, it's more, punk rock Warped Tour style than anything. Mm-hmm. I don't overdo it. But it's nice to be able to play everything how it's supposed to be, and how to have conversations with folks on how it's supposed to be.
Right.
And quite honestly, no complaints.
Yeah, that has been the plus for us as well. We've had people show up to perform and they're like, oh wait, do we have to censor ourselves? And I'm like, oh, no you don't. Just play your music. Yeah. Which is, I don't know, it was probably one of the banes of my existence in a radio station, was having to sit and go through each album and edit each song. So I'm thankful.
Oh yeah, no, I you know, there was a bunch of stuff that I was so, you know, with songs back in the 90s that would have, you know, a lot of the Real Big Fish stuff, you know, of course, and I would, you know, I would play them, but I would know exactly where everything was. So I was pretty good with making sure that the, you know, the OPI stuff didn't get out there.
Right. So, because I pay attention to who you are, the mixes that it seems that you play are, you know, I don't know, I would say popular, at least for our term. I don't know, I probably lack the vernacular to think of a better thing, but, you know, your Real Big Fish, Snow Doubt, etc., the bands that made it, and then
but they were all, you know, a lot of these bands started off as local bands. I mean, Less Than Jake, I've been playing them since their first demo.
Right. But now I've noticed, too, that you've incorporated other underground, like, for example, Joker's Republic was on our show last year, and now they're being played on your show as well. So, do you go in search of these other bands, or are they...
Okay, I get what you're saying. You're talking about the music discovery aspect of things.
Right, like, are you seeking them out, or are people submitting things to you? So if any band who is currently watching, or who we come across, is trying to find other airplay, how do we go about connecting them to you and having their stuff played on your show? Or are you solely like, nope, well, I do it myself and I go in search of these people?
No. I quite honestly have pretty much open door policy. So if someone wants to reach out and say, hey, can I send you this? I'm fine. I'll take a listen, and then it either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, then just try again next time. It's you know, ultimately when I listen to something, it either works for me or it don't. And however, I'm also, you know, being online and you know, just I don't know, it's just been around for a long time. You know, you get, you know, plugged in and turned on to a whole bunch of different things that are going on. And so, especially with ska, there's certain hot spots that I always keep, you know, if I start seeing things start heating up, you know, there's always like one or two key bands that are leading the way, that are helping out the scene. And quite honestly, I think one of the big factors is, so you mentioned Joker's Republic, who I adore, and I think Austin is rad, and I think what he's doing for the scene in New Jersey and the East Coast is incredible. You know, I think they should definitely be a band on people's radar. The only thing that they need to do more is they need to write more songs and they need to tour more. And that's not an easy feat to do. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, a lot of the hard work is still yet to come, but at least with a lot of the bands, you know, I've connected with them because of the internet. Now, they came onto my attention because we have a mutual friend. His name is Justin, and he put out a couple compilations, and his latest compilation just came out called "What Do You Know About Ska Punk?"
Yep.
And they're on volume 3 now.
Yep.
But when he sent me, I think the first one, I don't know. It was either the first one or the second one, and that's when I had heard this one song. You know, I went through and mark down what songs I thought worked and what didn't. And one of those songs that worked for me was Joker's Republic, and I reached out to him.
So, for funsies real quick, who would you say is up and coming of the underground stuff that people should be made aware of? Joker?
Oh, this is going to I'm really intrigued with what's going on with the Filipino ska scene.
Ah.
And it's taking off there like it was taking off here in Orange County in the 90s.
Do you notice when you do your show, you're obviously able to track listenership and where it comes from? Are you seeing a giant spike in specific areas?
When I get the stats from my program director, it's nice. A lot of times I don't get that. However, I do try to keep on social media. So, I do my best trying to engage everyone during the show. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes sometimes it works and sometimes it feels like you're, I don't know how else to, pulling teeth. Thanks, Miss Tazy. Thank you. Sometimes it feels like pulling teeth. And, for me, I'm just grateful to have people listen to the show. But when I do get my stats every now and then, the program director is very happy, and he lets me go over my my regular time slot a lot of times.
By how much?
I think the most I pushed it is 3 hours.
Ooh.
And usually, quite honestly, it's funny. Most of the Ska Parade episodes that I produce end up running about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Mm. So usually it's which is perfect. So the show's over at say like on Wednesday afternoons, and they run a whole feature called at 4:20.
Yes.
On the station, so it's like perfect, But it really depends on what's, I don't know. Again, I treat how I put together my playlists like an artist, like a painter, and quite honestly, no one can put the pieces together like I do.
What genre of ska do you most enjoy?
Oh, you know what?
Wave,
I didn't answer your question.
Wave. Yes.
Of what bands?
Yes, you can answer that too.
I did say the Filipino ska scene, but let me tell you, my favorite band in the Filipino ska scene is this band called Pink Cow.
Aww.
And and they have this song called Parasite.
We will have to look that up, because that is not.
And if that is not a hit song, I don't know what in terms of the punk ska genre. Mm-hmm. Like that is something. Over time, it's like you hear things and you're like, dude, that's a song that really should be a classic.
What draws you into that song?
I don't know. I think it. For me, I had a long-standing relationship with Tim Armstrong, and since the Op Ivy days, and so maybe it's sort of nice when I see bands going down that route. Mm. And but when they have a good song, man. It's awesome. Another band that's definitely on my radar and they actually got signed to Vinny's label. Vinny was the drummer of Less Than Jake.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also one of the co-founders of Fuel by Ramen Records, but he sold that a few years ago. And, it's sort of nice. It's sort of nice to have friends who they really, they don't have to work, but they do.
Right.
And so he started up a label a couple years ago called Paper and Plastic, and one of their new signees that came on board last year was a band from the UK called Call Me Malcolm.
Huh.
And I think they're great. Another recent discovery is, if you can believe, there is a ska band in India.
I can believe that. And what are they called?
For me, that's very rare. I've come across bands from all kinds of different places in the world. I couldn't even tell you another band from India. I had no idea. And but this band sort of sounds like English beat in a sense. And I liked one of their songs, and I actually just debuted it on Ska Parade this past week. Mm. And so they're a band called the Fankulus.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I'm always keeping my eyes and ears to a whole bunch of different scenes that are going on.
Do you work or is this like your first time doing this, where you're being interviewed by another human who does a show?
No, I've been interviewed before.
Are you working collaboratively with other DJs? Because I noticed in like your street team,
I by the way, I very much appreciate everybody who come up to bat and help me spread the good word about Ska and Ska Parade, because Facebook has made it very difficult to get one's message out there, and I need as much help as I think everybody needs as much help as they can get with that. And quite honestly, one lesson that I was I learned firsthand from Operation Ivy, which and the specials, and probably from all the stories and listening to the Clash, is about seeing unity. And I think that's always been very, very important, especially in ska and in punk music. Well, in all genres of music, but especially ska and punk, at least for me. I think it makes a world of difference, and again, I'm very, very grateful. Because quite honestly, it's like it's your music. How would I say it? You're always learning. You're always discovering.
That's very true. That's probably
so sometimes there just to make a point. There was a point in time where I didn't know what ska was.
How did you get into ska?
Well, when I was in high school, my brother and I, we would listen to a lot of the modern rock bands, and it was pretty, and we were listening to a lot of the beginning stages of other stations that were like K-Rock. For me in the Bay Area, there was a station called The Quake. Mm. And from there, I got at that and probably MTV 120 Minutes. I was turned on to different bands. Like my favorite bands in high school were like Fishbone and Descendants.
Yeah.
But I didn't know Fishbone was considered ska.
Ah.
You know, I also liked Madness and I liked the English beat, but I didn't know they were called ska. In fact, probably the strangest thing is one of the first acts, like the first local bands I ever went to go see when I was a teenager, turns out to be a ska band. Like the first ska band in the Bay Area. And they were called the Uptones.
Ooh, I love them.
And yeah, so I mean, yeah, so without, you know, I don't know, my whole life is, you know, I could go anywhere in the world and for some reason I will run into the only person who knows what ska is and probably knows who I am. And it happens over and over and over again. I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, there's, you know, so that's, I guess, you know, I'm like the Johnny Appleseed or the Forrest Gump or, you know, however you want to put it. But, you know, I've become that resource of, you know, educating everyone about what I think is good music.
So
and I'm willing to not only give upcoming bands, you know, a good listen, but I have long-standing relationships with a lot of acts who got their break from my show. Mm-hmm. You know, my show has done, you know, I've done everything proper, and it's still weird to me that, you know, I never got asked to be on satellite radio, and you know, I don't know. It's just, you know, how it was or how it is they think I'm not famous enough.
I don't think I'm.
But in terms of launching bands and launching hit songs, I've done it time and time and time again.
So how about
it's a good calling card to know that Gwen Stefani started with you.
Yeah. What's your view on what she does now?
I'm down with it.
Only because she has boobs?
Huh?
I said only because she has boobs?
No.
My perspective is a bit different because when I was little watching Gwen Stefani play ska music, it was empowering. And then it was almost as if sold out into mainstream pop music where it did nothing but continue to objectify her as a woman only because she was a girl lead singer of that band.
Well, the focus, it's all I can say is it's complicated. And the reality is that if you told me that Gwen back in the day would be our Elvis of our generation, I think I wouldn't have been on that page. But the reality is that she, it's like no matter whatever steps she took, she always managed to win everybody over. And I'm quite honestly, it's amazing to see Gwen, from when I first met her back in 1989 at their, I think my brother and I, we went to the rehearsal space, which was called Stomp Box. And then afterwards we went to their parents' house. And when I'm saying there, I mean, this is back when Eric Stefani was very much involved in the band. And, I mean, that's, I got to see the growth from that. And no matter what she always touched, it eventually turned out into gold. There was a lot of time back when they were always coming back on Ska Parade where, they weren't getting those breaks. Where the record label, forced them to go out on the road without giving them any money. And they had no idea if their album would ever come out. But because of my efforts with Sublime, it changed the tide. And the sound that was their sound came into vogue. And her talent and the band's talent were undeniable. And she just, I mean, her work ethic, she has the biggest manager in the world in her camp.
So
I don't know. I'm grateful that she's she's the new Madonna.
has she been back on your show?
But let me put it, but not as profane as Madonna.
Profane?
Well, meaning.
She was
You know,
punking away.
I couldn't imagine Gwen doing some of the stuff that Madonna had done in her career.
Gotcha.
Sex book.
A sex book? No.
Yeah, exactly. That, you know, furthest thing away, but you know, she really
Yeah, her book
is,
and her hairy bush.
you know, A-list,
You
worldwide talent. You know,
Yes.
I mean, how many
Waste
people can command $1 million for
Right.
one show?
That's it is significant. I'm not downplaying the significance of where she came from to really kind of the opulence now that surrounds her.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. No, I mean, I think
She done got hit.
they were always, you know, I think it was incredible how long she was able to keep No Doubt going. To the point where you know, I think you know, I would doubt that
Dan's buzzer.
they will ever reunite ever again.
So Tazy, we're at the top of the hour, and I want you to plug yourself for the people who are listening, watching, and paying attention. So, name, show, where they can find you, and when.
My name is Tazy, and I do a show called Ska Parade. And you can listen to Ska Parade twice a week. New episodes happen every Sunday, and that is from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock Pacific time, which I think would be
10 to 12
o'clock
Central
midnight.
Time. Yes.
Yeah, your time. And all you have to do to listen to Ska Parade is download the dirtyradio.fm app from either the Apple App Store or on Google Play. And you download the Dirty Radio app, and then you open it, and then you hit the main station, and you press play when Ska Parade's on. I don't do a podcast. That's what makes me a little unusual. You can't get me on demand. You have to listen when I'm on. So I'm on Sunday nights. I'll give it in your time, 10 p.m. to midnight, and then it re-airs on Wednesdays from, let's see, your time would be 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And you download the Dirty Radio app, and you can go to dirtyradio.fm. And if you go there, you can download that, and that's your way to listen to Ska Parade every week. And I promise to everyone that I will turn them on to their new favorite bands and play some classic ones as well.
Yay! And kitties.
Oh yeah, and you get and I'm a big cat. My wife and I we love our kitty cats, and so our new generation of kitty cats are actually the Ska Cats.
Yes.
And if you want to follow them, you could do hashtag the Ska Cats.
See,
And it's cats with the letter C.
at work today, people were asking me the differences. Like, oh, does he do a show like you? What's the difference? And so I was like, we should draw a Venn diagram of like, here are the differences. The similarities are ska and kitties.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the way that I envision Ska Parade now is a lot like, you know, if you did, you know, what we do are called specialty shows. They're not on every day, you know, and I wanted to make the ultimate specialty show. And so it has all these different factors of all these shows that I love, and I throw them all into what basically that's what makes up Ska Parade. So, you know, the backbone is a ska punk show, but then it's also a new music show. It also has elements of like what you love in morning radio. You know, it has, I don't know, it's part world music show, part, I don't know, you know, I have a love affair with radio too. And so I like to, you know, involve that with what I do with my palette, I guess, or my sound palette.
So, again, Tazy Phillipz, Ska Parade. You can listen to him new Sunday nights, which would be 10 to 12 p.m. Central, or 8, right, to 10 Pacific. If you download the dirtyradio.fm app, which you can find on the App Store or through your Google Play device, hey, check it out. And if you miss a show, you can re-listen again on Wednesdays as well, Central. That's 4 to 6. That's 2 to 4 Pacific. Hell, I'm getting these things down. Time zones really good.
I'm proud of you of that. Thank you so much. You're doing so much better than I would normally be translating these things. Most of the time, I mean, with the help of the technology, it makes it so much easier, you know, just to look at the phone and go, oh, what time is it in the Philippines?
Oh, I actually figure it out. I can't say I've ever Googled that. My brain works. Yay!
Yep.
So with that, I'm going to say thank you and leave you this evening because we got a bunch of new music that we're going to play. So,
awesome.
Thank you so much.
It was really nice chatting with you. I hope you found this to be nice. And quite honestly, can I do one more plug?
Yes,
please?
Go ahead.
I would encourage you to check out skaparade.com and check out the merch that I have there. My compilations that my brother and I produce are some of the best ever. That you know, really have stood the test of time, and you know, how can you not deny not wanting to have or how, you know, you should want to have a Ska Parade T-shirt, and I actually have Ska Parade 25th anniversary T-shirts there.
So you're 5 years behind, man. Are you gonna have new ones come out?
Yeah, isn't that weird? Well, so what ends up happening is, you know, through all the years and being on different stations, there's times that you're not on station. So that's what that disruption's about.
Gotcha.
But when we actually started was November of '89, and that's when the original Ska Parade documentary came out. And you know, Ska Parade's been going strong ever since. And I thank you so much for your interest, and thank you so much for being part of the street team, and thank you so much for you know, being part of or just loving the music that I love so much.
Yes, unity, my friend. A checkerboard throughout, connecting the world with music. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good
Alrighty,
evening.
take it easy. Alrighty.
Okay, thanks. Bye. That was Tazy Phillipz from Ska Parade, and again, you can check him out. He does a ska radio show on for Sunday nights, and you can re-listen again on Wednesday. The uniqueness about his show is that you actually have to listen to it as it airs because it's a radio show. You won't be able to go back and go, oh. So, with that, if you're interested, download the dirtyradio.fm app and you'll be able to not only check out his show, but other shows as well. And so, with that, we're going to take a short break and then play some new music. Okay, thanks. Bye!